Ivelisse alone in the ring. Angelico, too far to do a thing. Son of Havoc out on the outside. It was fun while it lasted. That was dope!
So let's talk about Lucha Underground. Because it's my channel. I can do whatever I want on April Fool's Day. So we're not talking about Star Wars today. We're talking about professional wrestling today. And not just any professional wrestling show, mind you. We're talking about the greatest professional wrestling show of all time. So crack open a cerveza, my friends. Let's Lucha. Now, I know what you're thinking. Professional wrestling isn't all that stuff fake. Yeah, and it's awesome. You may not think you have any interest, but hear me out. I didn't have much interest in wrestling either until I watched this show. Yeah, wrestling's scripted. It's a little disingenuous to call it fake, because you can't really fake all of this.
Oh my god, oh my god! What can I do here? Creating the distance. Times rising from the ashes. Oh, God.
But it being scripted allows for awesome storylines. And I could go on about why we as people tend to feel emotional responses to things we know are fiction. There's this whole theory about it called the paradox of fiction. I wrote a paper about it in college, but it's not important right now. We're talking about Lucha Underground. And I'm not here to sell you on Lucha Underground as a wrestling product. No, no, no. I'm here to sell you on it as a television show. Now, there's a lot that separates Lucha Underground from your average wrestling show. But what it really comes down to is one simple thing. When you watch other wrestling shows, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, NXT, AEW, Impact, or whatever else, those are wrestling TV shows. Lucha Underground is a TV show with wrestling. It's a television show first, and a wrestling product second. Lucha Underground is not reality TV. It's a supernatural thriller. Now, the show starts off disguised as a wrestling show, but as the plot unravels over time, and the show finds its footing, it becomes a story about the descendants of ancient Aztec tribes, the resurrection of ancient gods, a secret underground organization, undercover cops, magical artifacts, and even time travel. It's like the MCU in a wrestling show. It makes no attempt to present itself as realistic, and it's awesome. While most wrestling shows advance their story through promos or talk shows or awkward backstage segments, Lucha Underground has these cinematic vignettes that are filmed like a movie. These are inspired by Grindhouse B-movies, and they have such a unique vibe to them. There's nothing else quite like them in any other wrestling show. It's not trying to pass itself off as real, it's just trying to be a captivating TV show. While we, the audience, see these segments, they aren't being canonically captured backstage by a camera crew and visible to the commentators and other wrestlers. For example, in a normal wrestling show, if a wrestler attacks someone backstage, the other characters are going to know about it. But in Lucha Underground, if a character gets murdered backstage, the other wrestlers won't know that there's a murderer. Did I say murder? Oh yeah. Characters die on this show. The wrestlers are characters first and foremost, and they can and will die like characters in any other TV show. Wrestlers get decapitated, eaten, and later on start dying in sacrifice to the gods matches. It's pretty sick. Now, I do need to talk about the actual wrestling a bit too. So, if you're not familiar with wrestling, this part of the video is probably going to sound like complete nonsense. And you're probably right. But anyway, the style of wrestling is worth talking about. As you might expect, Lucha Underground involves Lucha Libre. So the wrestling is very fast-paced, with lots of flips and dives. But luckily, even if Lucha Libre isn't for you because you don't like fun, there are matches for everyone in Lucha Underground. There are wrestlers with a more mat-based style for those who like a more old-school, slower pace. And if you like hardcore wrestling, boy howdy, there's a lot for you to love. There's the Grave Consequences casket matches, the Cero Miedo matches, the Weapons of Mass Destruction match, and the Hell of War match. Oh god, the Hell of War match. And, of course, there's the wrestlers themselves. If you watch WWE, you may see some familiar faces like Ricochet, John Morrison, Ezekiel Jackson, Santos Escobar, Isaiah Swerve Scott, Karrion Kross, and, of course, Rey Mysterio. Or, if you watch AEW, you may recognize Cage, Sonny Kiss, Jake Hager, Sammy Guevara, Luchasaurus, Eva Lise, Jack Evans, Angelico, and of course, the Lucha Brothers themselves, Phoenix and Pentagon Jr. Now, I can already hear what you're saying. Sure, Michael, this sounds like the greatest show ever, but I'm broke. I don't have any money. How am I going to buy the show? Good news, you don't have to. You ever hear of this streaming platform called Tubi? Well, me neither, but apparently it's free and it's on there. All 4 seasons. You can just watch it. I don't even think you need to create an account. So if you want to watch it, you can watch it. There's no excuse not to. Now, there are a few caveats in my recommendation of this show. First and foremost, there are in hindsight some unfortunate inclusions of certain wrestlers. While these may have seemed cool at the time, it's hard to enjoy certain wrestlers when we know they're scumbags in real life. Namely, Alberto Del Rio, Joey Ryan, and Sexy Star. Though this only applies to a handful of wrestlers, it still really sucks. There's also the fact that the show was canceled and thus doesn't really have an ending. In fact, the last season ends on a cliffhanger, and it's probably never going to get continued as most of the cast has moved on to other major promotions like WWE or AEW. But it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And this show is one hell of a journey. Those caveats aside, though, I cannot recommend this show enough. Whether you're a wrestling fan or not. I was not a fan of wrestling until I heard about the show on the Super Best Friend cast. If you are a fan of wrestling, I recommend starting the show from the beginning. Because the show starts as a fairly standard wrestling show, you'll be able to enjoy the show for the wrestling show it starts as, and for the show it soon becomes as it grows into the wackiness that I described. If you're not a fan of wrestling, but still willing to give this show a shot, just watch a recap of Season 1, and then start with Season 2. By then, the show has found its strengths, and you can enjoy it even if wrestling isn't really your thing. Thank you for watching. If you want my Star Wars opinions, you can subscribe to me here on my channel or my podcast feed. You can follow me on Twitter at Local First Order. So, remember to support your local order. Down with you, Aztec tribes. Many wrestlers were sacrificed to the gods to bring you this video. And all remaining systems will bow to the First Order. Wait a minute, that last one didn't work.